Hello humans! Today on the chopping block we have this guy right here. This is a Kizer Vanguard Smolt. Black G10, micarta handle, 14C, 28N blade. Cardboard, burn it, recycle it, do what you need to do. Okay. Kizer has this like pseudo-laminated plastic crap that they use. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's like a rubberized paper. I dislike it. This one here is better. It's more like a thick cardstock with a thin like plastic coating on it, but I don't like it. To continuously improve and provide a better user experience, we have recently updated our packaging. Rest assured, both the new and old packaging contain genuine products from our brand. We promise that although the appearance may change, the quality... Okay, so this is kind of cool. It's just giving you an update that, you know, we've changed how we do our packaging. Okay. New logo. Again, plain cardboard, burn it, recycle it, do what you do with cardboard. We get a sticker. This is the Drop Bear Action for Dreams sticker. I don't have this one yet, I think. It goes over there with the rest of the stickers. We have the knife itself. It's going to go there for a second. We have the plastic. This is the absolute bare minimum amount of plastic you can get in something like this, so I do give Kizer props for that. Minimal plastic. And everything else in terms of packaging is just cardboard, which I like. We have our snack packet, so this is going to go with the rest of my snack packets. We have a Kizer microfiber cloth. These are fine. They're microfiber cloth. We have our sheath with this sort of multi-adjustable belt attachment. Kind of wish there was a pocket set up for this one here in particular, just because I think it would suit it, but it comes with a pocket attachment and an easily adjustable pocket attachment, so there's that. This is the rubberized plasticky bullshit. And there's the digital manual, so it doesn't even come with a proper manual anymore. Okay. Now we have the knife itself. Very simple, minimalist packaging. We have sheath, knife, sticker, and microfiber cloth in terms of what you can keep. Or what you are expected to keep, I should say. Dog poo bag, very useful. Plastic tip protector, and then we have the knife itself. Very, very simply designed fixed blade, drop point fixed blade. Contoured G10 scales, dual colored G10 scales with the black and the green. Very rear mounted liner position if that's your thing. Full finger grip, short little blade. Nice and simple. This is the Smolt in 14C28N. We've got tumbling on the blade itself. Okay, not as strong as some Kizers I've gotten. I've gotten some Kizers that I can like sit on my desk and shoot the frickin' sheath into the ceiling if I want to. So there is that. Part of it might just be the weight from this belt clip setup that they've got going on. It's pretty bulky. Just size-wise, I think that this would make probably a pretty good pocket, like in-pocket carry, especially if you wanted to just have it set up in your front pocket. Sheath's a little wide for that, but it's definitely not the end of the world. You don't get a really positive click. It just kind of seats in there, which is a little unfortunate. Not the best sheath I've ever seen. Not a bad sheath, but not the best sheath I've ever seen, I think is the conclusion I'm going to get. This, however, this is nice. These setups are really nice, adjustable in many, many different ways. You can set it up however you want to set it up. These pieces right here. Oh, don't lie. Don't tell me I'm a liar. I'm fairly certain they pop out and you can adjust them. Ow. Maybe you can't. Well, either just broke it or it's adjustable. Okay. Yes, you can adjust this depending on how wide your belt is. So, that's kind of nice. I do wish they weren't quite as tight in there, but is what it is, locks into place over your belt, real nice. Alright. Now for the knife itself. Let's see. Kizer's normally pretty good. Yeah, very consistent edge, feels very well polished. Oh wow. There we go. Okay. I'm having some problems. This could very well be user error. It's been quite a while since I've done this, but the whole edge is feeling very sharp, if a little bit if not quite as bitey as I would necessarily be used to, but the edge does feel very well finished. Let's do our puncture test. I think in terms of puncture, this is a fairly thick blade, and it does taper, but only in the last little bit. It's not a full-length distal taper, so I think this is gonna poke fairly okay, but not amazingly. Let's... Oh yeah, never mind, that was actually pretty good. Shook the whole desk there. I mean, it's not a big knife by any means, but it pokes just fine. And it goes like, that was very minimal effort and sunk right down to the scale. It's actually harder removing it, just because there's no kind of like area to grab. This is a very plain, very open handle, which I like in a small everyday carry style fixed blade. Like, this is a knife that I think I'd reasonably carry every single day. So it doesn't necessarily need to be as pokey. This isn't a self-defense object. I'm gonna compare this to the other Kizer knife that I really like, just for a moment. So this is my Kizer Suez, which is something that I use when I do knife training. When I do that, and when I do some outdoor stuff, D2 steel, which is a much tougher steel. Oh, it's covered in shmoo. Anyway, D2 steel, much tougher steel, but it's got a lot of sort of areas for me to grab onto when I am pulling it out if I've stuck it into something. Whereas with the smolt, it does not have that, right? Like, it's a very simple, squared off handle. I'd actually be willing to bet that the handle thickness is the same throughout. It's contoured, it's very comfortable, but I don't think that it's in particular designed for that kind of task. So we're going to go tight up here. We're just going to slide all the way along. Yeah, so it's like 819.5 all the way along. So yeah, it's exactly squared off, which does make a lot of sense. Like, it's a very open ergonomic profile. It gives you lots of different things that you can do very, very comfortably for whatever it is that you need to do in that particular moment. But it does make it, if it gets stuck, poked into something, it's a little bit harder to remove as a result. You kind of got to get your fingers up here in front of the scales to pull, which is not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. Let's do our rubber cut test. I think this is going to do fairly well. It's a little thick behind the blade, behind the edge, but it's not too bad. And because it is full height, and I need something flat to double check. Razor blade box. Yeah, it's a flat grind. So because it is full height and a flat grind, I do think that this is going to go fairly well, but let's see. Yeah, it's a little thick behind the edge, so starting it off, I'm definitely feeling it a little bit more, but once it gets going, it's really not too bad. And then it's just the last little bit. Come on. There we are. Yeah, so more resistance than a lot of knives, just because it is a little bit thicker, doesn't have as much of a drop, and it's a little thicker behind the edge, but it does slice fairly well. I think as like a hard use EDC, this is probably pretty damn suitable 14C28N. It's a little bit tougher than some stainless steels. It's still a stainless steel, so minimal maintenance, which is really handy. And this is not, like, this was, I believe, slightly under $100, which for me makes this a budget knife. That is very important. For me, this is a budget knife at, I need to double check. I think this was $86. Let me double check that. I have the receipt. Haha. Oh no, this was $96 at House of Knives. So it is a budget object. It is not a super expensive knife, but it's definitely pretty close, and I do think that it earns that. It's comfortable. Two-tone G10 is neat. It's just a little bit of visual flair. The texturing here, I am feeling it, and I do think it would be helpful. The sheath is definitely one of the standout components of this. I do kind of wish that they had foregone the belt style clamp in favor of a pocket clip, like a, what are they called? There's a couple different clip options that are really good, but there's the J style clips that you can get, and there's the locking clips. I don't quite remember what they're called, but the locking clips that you can also get, which I think would be really, really good for this. Either of those I think would be a better option than this, because I think that this is a really good pocket carry knife. But that's not what I got. I got this thing, so I'm going to use this as it is. Let's see. I might want to adjust it for scout carry. I do think this would be a really good scout carry knife, just because it's minimal. It's not very long. It's fairly small. It'll fit nicely in the small of my back, so I do think this would make a nice scout's carry blade, but I'll have to try out some different things and see. I'm not going to adjust that yet. I'm going to play with it first. So yeah, I am cautiously optimistic. My initial impression is I think this is going to make a good, harder use EDC knife. It's small, it's minimal, it's not much to carry, which I do think is absolutely to its benefit. I wish it had come with a clip, but we're going to see how much that hinders me over the next couple of weeks, which should happen now. And we are back. So I've been playing with this guy on and off for a couple of weeks now. For the first 2 weeks, I kept this hardware on, and I actually wore this every day. And I have to say, I don't dislike this hardware. I actually think this is really good hardware. I don't think that this was the right knife for this hardware, though. Allow me to explain. So, the reason I don't think that this is a particularly good knife, or hardware for this particular knife, comes down to the sheath. You're shaking really bad. Comes down to the sheath, because with the blade in, as you can see, there is legitimately a couple of inches of handle that are sticking up above the leading edge of the sheath. Even at, and here's the other thing, these two holes actually don't fit this hole pattern, like, at all in any configuration, which means you have to use these two. Like, this top hole is only really there for, like, if you were to tie it, essentially, just because of the spacing. This is the standard spacing. This does not relate to the standard spacing at all. And actually, I don't know, I actually don't think that this or this is the standard spacing either. Not world-ending, just kind of annoying. But what this ended up meaning is when it was attached to my belt in, like, a vertical hold with this, it ended up being very high. High enough to actually jab me in the side quite a bit. So, clicked in over the belt like this on my side, and I ended up, like, every time I had to bend over, I found this dug underneath my ribs really bad, which I just found to be really annoying. The alternative answer is it does fit this hole and this hole for a Scout's carry, and on their website, that's actually the recommended belt carry, is Scout's carry, and that works just fine, but size-wise, this is a really nice size and shape to just go in the pocket, so that's what I ended up preferring. It fit really nicely in my front pocket because, again, it would have been nice if there was a way of attaching to this top hole just to have it sink a little bit more in my pocket. But, you know, it'll go up to there in the pocket, and you can put it at an angle in the pocket. There's no way of setting it up at an angle on the belt without modifying it. So for me at least, slipping this into the pocket at an angle, I found to be really comfortable. It put it at a low enough in my pocket to where I could actually sit down and do stuff like that comfortably. So yeah, if you are thinking about picking one of these up, I personally would get some type of a clip. There's Alti clips. I don't even know what these are. These are Success Courier SL. Okay. It's something made in China. I don't know. It came in a little plastic pouch. It was like $10. But it does work really well. I would like a little bit more attention out of it. It doesn't hold in the pocket the best. But this is not a difficult knife to get a hold of, and it did keep the sheath in my pocket well enough. So I'd recommend picking up a pocket clip and running with that, because honestly, this is a knife that's worth carrying in the pocket. It's fairly small. It has roughly a 3-inch blade to it, and it does come in a whole bunch of different versions. So like I said, this one here was slightly under $100 in 14C28N. On the Kizer website, at least in Canada, the prices are all in USD, so that's what I'm going to use. There's AEBL versions for about 60 USD, and so that's quick conversion at like 70. So they're under $100 by a good bit. They're like, I think they're under 90 in AEBL. And there's versions that have this black G10 and wood inlays, and then there's their new snacky version that has like some coloration on the tip and pure wood scales. That's going to be your least expensive. Then there's the 14C28N version, which is this one right here. There's a D2 version so this is 62 USD. There's a D2 version for about 63 USD. And there's a 3V version for about 69 USD. So 69 USD will be slightly over 100 Canadian dollars once you have it in hand in Canada, whereas the rest of them should be a little bit under 100 Canadian, which for me is what I consider to be a budget knife. The 3V and D2 versions both come exclusively with coated blades in order to prevent corrosion. I don't necessarily agree with this completely. I like uncoated blades personally, and I think that this looks really good in a stain wash. This also looks good in the polished version that the ABL seems to be in. So that's probably what I would go with personally, as one of those two. That being said, bang for your buck, the 3V version is definitely the best. And I think that all the prices are very close together. I personally would either go for the AEBL version or the 3V version if I were to do this again. That being said, I really like 14C28N, and this knife held up beautifully. It is definitely thick behind the edge. So this wasn't like an ultimate slicer or anything like that, but when I got into like woodworking, it was exceptionally good for harder use tasks, especially for such a small knife. You can get the very neutral handle position means you can get a really good grip on it, and powering into like hard cutting materials, this just did an absolutely beautiful job. So if you're in the market for like an EDC hard use fixed blade, this is an easy recommend in my opinion. The 3V version for that use is definitely going to be the best. Lots of edge retention and lots of toughness. Cost, of course, being corrosion resistance, but that is not the end of the world. G10 and micarta, this is very easy to hold on to even when it's wet. The micarta is on the slightly tackier side when it's wet, so it just sinks into your hand beautifully. And I actually did figure out throwing with this knife. So obviously visually the balance is pretty butt heavy, and in reality the balance is fairly butt heavy too. It's actually a little bit behind where I like to put my index finger, which does make the blade feel very nimble, but is not optimal for throwing. But at about 10 paces with the no-spin technique, I was getting up to about 80% accuracy on a 2-foot round. So definitely not like the ultimate throwing knife, but you can figure it out without too much difficulty. And like I said, I've only had this for like three and a half weeks. And I wasn't using it every day during that time either. So if this is something that you wanted to throw, you could get it without too much difficulty. I'd be willing to guarantee it. Yeah, no, like exceptional little hard use knife. Not something that's going to appeal to everybody, but for an EDC hard use knife, I don't think that there's that much that's going to compare to it. Honestly, it's very comfortable in a variety of grips. It did sharpen up nicely. It's not difficult to sharpen up. I mean, I like 14C28N, but because of the wide variety of different steels that you can get, it's kind of, there's an option for everybody. Definitely get a clip though. Like this is a sheath that works best, in my opinion, in the pocket. I didn't try like neck carry or anything like that. The retention's not bad, but it's not as tight as other Kydex options. So I wouldn't necessarily like love to trust this in like neck carry, but I mean, it'll probably hold. Yeah, no, in the pocket, absolutely love this thing. That's the way that I would do it. Let's do some size comparisons real quick. So here it is next to the Wee Knives Banter and the Civivi Chevalier. As you can see, it's actually a little bit smaller than the Banter, which for me would make this a small knife, even if it wasn't a fixed blade. And fixed blades, generally speaking, are larger than folders. So this is comfortably a small knife, in my opinion. That being said, in terms of blade length, the actual blade and edge are just about the exact same. Here it is, of course, next to our Buck Knives Buck 110. Truly the classic Grandpappy's knife. This one is in desperate need of a cleaning, but that's okay. And our Zippo lighter. As you can see, it is quite a bit smaller than the Buck 110. Not really worth doing thickness because it doesn't fold, so instead I'm just going to hop right over to blade thickness. So in terms of blade thickness, it's basically 1/8 of an inch. This is reading a hair under 1/8 of an inch. Which isn't going to be like the ultimate in terms of thickness or anything like that. But that is still, you know, for a blade of this size, that is fairly robust. And it does feel it. Like, it's not an ultimate slicing knife. I've said that already, but it's absolutely true. That being said, going through wood, going into tougher work tasks, this thing ate it, like, really, really well. I will say, I understand the purpose of the lanyard at the back, and I'm sure for some people it'd be a really useful thing. The handle space, for me at least, is big enough that I don't think I would ever actually use it. And this isn't a knife that I'd be using for like heavy chopping or anything where I'd be worried about losing the knife in my hand. I'm sure that's not going to be the case for everybody, and some people are really going to value having the lanyard holder. But for me, it just genuinely doesn't make a difference one way or another. That being said, I don't think it detracts anything from this knife. It is fine. It's just nothing one way or another. Oh yeah, the other size comparison I like doing with fixed blades is, of course, my Morkniv Companion F. As you can see, it is quite a bit smaller than the Companion F. Before I forget. Yeah, as far as like budget fixed blades go, I don't, off the top of my head, I can't think of any budget EDC fixed blade that I like more than this. That is a lot of qualifiers, but just the size of this thing is perfect. The sheath goes really nicely into the pocket. The sheath isn't too thick. Like it's a fairly thin sheath, and despite the fact that it is wide, it sits so flat at the front of my pocket that I can still get my notebook, my phone, all my stuff in behind it without feeling like I'm overly bulging my pockets or anything like that. Like, this did an absolutely exceptional job. The hardware they give you is good, don't get me wrong, it's just not what I would include personally with this knife. I think there were better options. But like, yeah, for a little EDC fixed blade, this is hard to beat, especially for a hard use EDC fixed blade. I'd go with the 3V version personally if this was like a one and done option, or the AEBL if you're just, you know, looking for something in this and you want to go for the cheapest option. The AEBL, it's a fine, like, it's a good steal in my opinion. The D2 and the 14C I think sit in a weird spot in the middle price-wise, just because they're not that much more than the AEBL. And you do get a decent performance boost, but not that huge of a performance boost. Whereas, like, the 3V is such a big step up, in my opinion, that for the extra $10, just get the 3V. That being said, I'm glad I didn't, personally. But that's all going to come down to personal preference and everything else. I'm glad I got a stainless version. Yeah, these are super duper cool. Definitely a couple of like rougher edges. I wouldn't do the sheath this way necessarily, but I see why they did. You know, the choil's fine, but nothing to write home about, and it's not going to last super duper long. The other thing that I would have liked a little bit is some extra jimping out near the tip, or even just more aggressive jimping. Like, this is not very deep jimping, and I didn't find that it retained my thumb very well. But, again, I think this is a really, really good knife. So I would strongly recommend one of these. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.